Hello and welcome to the Make Dope Shit podcast. It's a series of interviews about making stuff. It's really that simple. Ultimately, I'm just sitting down with a bunch of artists and talking about their craft and whatever they do. Today's episode is with Scarlet Street. Scarlet Street is an Ohio-based pop punk band who, at the time of recording, had just released their debut full-length album not all that long ago. And we met up in their practice spot to discuss all sorts of things, from this album to their recent tour and what it's like working on new music right now. This episode was pretty DIY. We had 2 microphones for 5 people. We were set up in a band practice space, so somebody next door was playing the drums at one point. But it was an awesome conversation, and thankfully the audio turned out pretty much just fine. So yeah, you can stream Scarlet Street wherever you get your music. Follow them on Instagram at scarlet.street, on Twitter at scarletstreetoh, or hit up the description wherever you're listening to this to find any sort of relevant links. Without any further ado, my conversation with Scarlet Street. So we'll just jump right into it. What are you guys working on lately? What are you making? What are you doing as of late or right now?
I think I'll do it. I think right now, just in the wake of the album coming out, we really want to dig into the next one. I think even when we left the studio, it was kind of shit, that was cool, but I think we can do even better with the next one. I think we were already brimming with ideas on the drive home from New Jersey.
Yeah, I would also agree with that. Going into studio for us was a massive learning opportunity. So we learned a lot of things. We learned the things that we definitely want to improve on for the next time. And to follow up on that, driving home, it's okay, cool. So now we're very excited for recording again, but we also, in the sense of, okay, now we know what we want to have ready to go for the next recording, and that we want to just also kind of push all the music further than we did with the first record.
Yeah, what was for those who don't know, you guys just went and recorded. Where do you guys go to record this debut album?
Soundacre Studios. Okay. We recorded with Gary Sione.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, and that was I guess, was that your guys' first experience in a big proper recording studio doing something at this scale?
Yeah, fair enough. Individual members have recorded in other aspects, like doing home recording stuff and doing
I've done one. It was weird. The last band I was in, the guitarist had a friend who went to college at Capital University in Columbus, and as a project, they just needed a band to record, and we got lucky and got a free recording session for one song. But that band is now extinct, and there's a song lingering on Spotify, and that was my only other studio experience. It was that.
Yeah, Luke and I both separately have actually recorded with a band called Atomic Potato. It's kind of an ill-fated thing, but what's funny is we both recorded the same band at separate times. Both of us were that band. Yeah, that was a ska band. Yeah. Skip ska. But yeah, no. Luke left to move to Cleveland, and I ended up moving to Cincinnati at the exact same time, and we recorded at a place called I think For You as well.
What was it called? New Fidelity.
Yeah, New Fidelity. Yeah. So. Yeah, that's who we record with too. I think somebody with the Specials. Actually, I don't even remember who, but yeah.
So I want to get into what. I guess there was another question I want to ask that I'll now just we're going to skip a step here. But what was that process like? Being in a studio with a producer and all that, working you guys through your material, because I'm sure you guys went in there with. Well, I mean, obviously you went in there with a bunch of material that you wanted to record. What did that process look like for you guys, and what were some of the things, I guess, that you picked up in terms of filtering your ideas or refining your work?
I think refining is a yeah. Yeah, no.
Maybe even humiliation, I guess. We realizing that we're not as hot shit as we thought we were, and then building on that and yeah, I don't know. We came in and a lot of songs changed. So
The first day, I mean, Gary, I talked on the phone with Gary quite a lot before we headed out. And, I remember even like kind of telling him, I was like, yeah, we'll send like demos your way. And on the phone, he's such a nice dude because he's like, oh, yeah, like whenever, And that was key, like that was code for like, I'm not going to listen to him. So
by design.
Yeah.
By
so
design.
we get there and he's like, all right, guys, like, he's like, he's so kind, when we get there, he's like, yeah, I've got like beds for you guys, there's like a PlayStation and an Xbox for when you're, chilling and everything, yeah. And he's like, we get in there, he sets up the mics, he's like, all right, so just like start playing these songs for me. And we're like, okay, yeah, sure. He's like, yeah, this will just be pre-production. We'll play the songs. And we like play the first song. He's like, yeah, so that like goes on 2 minutes too long. Like that. Yeah. So go ahead and like, we're not going to like play this bridge you had in mind because that's just like, that's adding too much to the song. And like, it was like that for every song. Like, like Patron Saint was a 5-minute, 45-second long song. It was almost a 6-minute long song. And it was like my baby on that album. And we do it. I was like, this is gonna be the song he's gonna like fucking love.
Like this is it. Yeah.
We do like one take, and he's like, "All right, Jake, you can come in from the drum room." I was like, "Oh damn, he liked it that much, huh?" He's like "Yeah." So why did you record 2 songs in one? So it was
very to the point. It's like okay, and then there was also literally that moment like night 1 or whatever where it was like, okay, we got some work to do. Yeah, and then it was it was done in a Gary Sione kind of way, but it was very just to the point. Like, okay, we have work to do. It's okay.
I was warned by like a lot of our peers and like bands like Knavery who'd like recorded with him. Like he's gonna be like rough on your first takes. Like you're gonna leave with a much better album, and that's like 1000% true. Mm-hmm. Some of these songs weren't even completely done. Like. Especially Talent Borrows. Mm-hmm. That song was another like 6-minute long song that we like literally rewrote entirely, and it was all because of Jake. Jake was like, let's slow that song down and like totally different drum beat, and it was 10 times better.
So what was the difference between like when you went there and you had all this material? What was the difference between something that you felt was done versus something that you felt still needed work? Like, how did you know? Or how do you know when you're writing a song? Like, what's that feeling like, or what's it like when you go, oh hey, I think this is done? Like, how do you kind of know that?
Well, we definitely kind of knew it. There was definitely a couple of songs that were feeling much more completed. I mean, Dealey Plaza, number one example. we played it for Gary, and he just kind of was like, okay, there was notes, but everything like structure wise and all that was just like, hey, there we go.
There was no notes.
Oh no, you're totally right. There was.
We played that song. He's like, "That's a good song.
That's
no
a good
notes."
Song. Cool.
Turned around. That was it. That was the only song. But I mean,
so then there's that. But then on the flip side, you have like where Patron Saint got its runtime, and the condension, which I think Ben should definitely speak a little bit more about Patron Saint, because I was like I said, it was his baby, and there was a lot of the process begs a little more explanation on that. But then like Talent Borrows was just sort of a. That song would not be what it is if not for Gary and Jake and sitting there going like, because it also it was instrument wise was a little bit more complicated in its original format, and it got kind of simplified in the ways that it needed to be simplified, and it got slowed down. But it's and Gary said the weed spoke to him. And that was it's like, oh my God, that song, so yeah.
To answer your question, like really directly, there was a lot of songs like Patron Saint or Dealey, like especially Dealey Plaza. I mean, we went in there, it was like, like one tiny little guitar part changed. Yeah. Maybe. But, that felt like 100% done before, like months before we even headed out. A song like Talent Borrows. Like what it didn't even have a name when we left, for one. I mean, like the demos didn't have like an idea of a vocal melody. I mean, that song was we were really rolling the dice on that one. And that was mostly on me. I feel like these guys had like their ideas figured out, and I was just kind of like, a lot of it was like, cool, Ben doesn't know what he's going to do for this song. And there's like even like the second and sometimes the third week, it was kind of like I'm really just like winging it sometimes. So, but yeah, like there's like the whole album has like a wide array of like songs that were like totally ready to go and songs that were like we winged it almost. And like it's kind of wild. Like I'm sure some people could maybe pick out the differences, but like even myself, I kind of forget like which ones were like so like just last minute and which ones were like super planned out.
Yeah, which if, and maybe the answer is it doesn't matter, but were there any of those that were like if you're looking at the unfinished ones, the ones that were unfinished when you went in versus the ones that you felt were more refined, looking back now that the process is done, I mean, do you feel like are your favorites more in one camp or the other, or are they pretty evenly split across that divide?
I feel like they run the gamut. Like some of the ones that I mean, Talent Borrows may be arguably one of the best, if not the best album. I mean, in my opinion, I like Patron Saint the best, I think. And that one was like, Gary was really nice in the sense that I was like, no, motherfucker, I'm going to take this one on. I'm going to edit this one down myself. And when we did, he was like, yeah, I like that. Cause it's kind of funny. We did like a Gary version and we did a Ben version, and we agreed on the Ben version, which made me feel like a fucking superhero. Yeah. But, yeah, like, I mean, it didn't change that much. It just lost parts essentially. And, I still like, that's still my favorite walking away. Like we're now a year and a half almost from when we recorded it, and I still love that one the most. And then, you know, like Talent Borrows is the total other end of that spectrum. I mean, like I pretty much so credit Gary and Jake for writing that song. And like that's probably my second favorite on there. Depending on the day, it might even be my first.
I don't know. Like I'm not gonna lie, I can be a little like self-centered about stuff. So like I don't know, when it comes to listening to the album, I'm like, well, what drum parts sound coolest to me? But because I play drums, so I don't know. I think my favorite song might be Mazda or Clam Fandango, but I mean I think that's pretty fair. But I don't know, like that bridge in Mazda, I can't remember if that was even written like that before we got in or not. I can't.
It was pretty roughly. Definitely the structure was similar, but
actually
what
no,
you ended
yeah,
up doing
the hi-hat pattern was I didn't have that before we got in the studio.
There's so many drum parts I know you just like pulled out in studio, and there was so many moments where like me and Rob can attest to this 100%, where like Jake would just pull out a drum fill, and Gary like the whole reaction was ooh.
He would be sitting in the control booth, obviously behind the console, and he would just turn to, you know, Ben or me or whoever was there in the room with him, and just it was, you know, slight eye squint, sort of, and then you're like, okay, cool. And then he would do, you know, oh, let's give it one more, you know. But
yeah.
But so it was more of a feeling in the room than anything.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, the very last thing that I would say to that, since everyone's talking personal faves, I still got to go Manos, The Hands of Fate. Love that song. I think it sounds so cool. And the reason that I like Manos, The Hands of Fate so much is because when we play it, when we hear it, it's like cool. And then also with kind of going back to where we're excited for the next record, I hope that there's more on this next record that is stylistically and musically more like that particular song. And I think that's
I was actually about to say that. Like the Manos, there's 3 tracks on this album that I feel like on the ride again, on the 8-9 hour ride back from New Jersey to Ohio, we were literally like, that's what we want to do next time. It's more songs like Manos, Patron Saint, which is funny, kind of an older song, but and Talent Borrows. Like those 3 tracks were like, that sounds like the future of Scarlet Street.
So I guess that kind of gives us a good jumping off point to go to the next, kind of some of the next stuff I want to talk about. But like to spoil it a little bit, you guys are here, for those who don't know, because they're probably only listening because there is no video. We're in you guys' practice space right now. And you're here to, work on writing some new material for the first time. And Ben, how long did you say it was?
Honestly, since before we went into studio, we recorded our self-titled debut in November of 2021, and most of 2021 was spent working on those songs. So like really since then,
Wow.
2020, early mid 2021, and now we're like finally trying to refine some old demos we've had kind of kicking around and bringing up some new ones with the help of Luke, who hasn't really said much today yet, but we'll get him involved a bit more here.
I'm going to talk to him about the tour as well, so don't worry.
Perfect.
Okay, so I mean, what does and I want to take like the old demos out of the equation completely for this question, but what does it look like for you guys to take a new idea that's like, oh, this might be something, just something that's not refined in any way whatsoever? Like what are the first steps of that process look like of turning an idea, whatever that idea might be, into a full-fledged song?
I think a lot of bands say the whole thing of like you just kind of jam together and think of stuff. But funny enough, I think and I could be wrong, but I think we actually come up with stuff separately and then bring it to the table more so. And I don't know, I think that's pretty cool.
So on that note, how are you guys, like, when you have those ideas separately, how are you like capturing those? Like, what's your process look like to get those from the outside world into this practice space?
We had a couple different methods. Like sometimes they do kind of happen spontaneously. Like even while we were kind of getting ready for like our album release and like tour while practicing, like there was sometimes, Rob would come up to me with like, hey, let me see your guitar real quick. I actually got an idea, and I just like get my like voice app or whatever it's called out and just like, I'm like, cool, before you play it here, like just let me capture that real quick.
Yeah.
There's like some demos I have just like sitting on my hard drive that have like literally drum parts and everything that I'm like to Jake, I'm like, ignore the drum parts, they suck.
Yeah.
You can do 10,000 times better. But it's kind of a good question because like before, what we would do is I kind of feel like it was me going, hey guys, here's this song and here's how it's played. And like even when is like getting up to studio time, I was like, this method sucks. I don't like this. And by the time we got to studio and like I said, we like kind of did like talent borrows and stuff. It was kind of like, shit, dude, these guys can like really like hold their own too. I mean, like I said, Jake, practically I give him full credit for writing talent borrows.
So then what was that the impetus of changing that process, was just being in the studio with these guys?
Kind of. It was like already on its way. Like I just like this band started from just being a solo project for me, and I hate solo projects. So like it was a begrudging solo project. Like I was like, I don't want to do this, but like nobody else is gonna play with me. So, and then like I've known Rob since college, and Jake in the craziest of circumstances like became our drummer. And like once we had that, it was like, okay, like definitely these guys are like competent. Rob doesn't know how many songs he's helped me write too. Like it's hilarious because I'll have like a demo that we recorded together actually, and he doesn't remember recording it.
Well, yeah. Well, there's also just it kind of also can come down to that. Oh yeah, there. What happened to that demo? It's like, oh yeah, that's on my old phone, or like that's the other thing that happens a lot too. What I'd really like us to kind of start doing more so in the future, and I'm gonna real quick also, don't allow Ben to sell himself short. There was a lot of the like the lyrics and the material and all that kind of stuff. When you're listening to the first record, a lot of that is a lot of it is Ben's really, really, really hard work into it. So don't allow him to sell himself too short on that. Like it's no, in all seriousness. But then anymore. I'll sit down with a guitar or with my bass or whatever, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. I kind of like the way that this sounds, and this is kind of, roughly how the song structure could be. But when it comes to, what I would like to do is literally just come to Jake and come to Ben and come to Luke and just sit there and say, this is the idea. This is the super rough song structure that I have, where here's kind of the lyrical content that I want to tackle with this, and be like, I'm not going to program drums to it or whatever. It's like we have Jake. I don't need to do that. It's just here. Like, and honestly, there was, when we were recording, that was a lot of those, kind of go back, those moments with Gary where he's just like, oh yeah, Jake, go for it. And then you could there was like you could be like, okay, he's following the structure. He's following the structure. Ooh, I like that. Or like, oh, that's not the structure, but that's better, kind of thing. So, that's how, at least how I would like to approach songwriting in the future. I feel like, that might be a point echoed by everyone, but, hey, great guitarist, great singer, great lyricist, great drummer. Let him do the work,
Great bassist.
Okay, bassist.
Oh, whatever.
I don't know. I feel oftentimes I just kind of play along to what these guys, give me, but I need to start giving them more stuff to play off of. But that's what the Yamaha EAD10 is for. It's a pretty cool mic that just mics all the drums in one little mic, but it's like $500. So there's that.
I kind of feel
nice
like
for ideas.
Yeah, I kind of feel like drummers get the kind of the short end of the stick with that, where
everything's
we have
expensive and big and
that
fucking.
But like we get all these fun pedals to play with, and the drummer gets nothing. So I feel like it's kind of cool. You get this like multi effect you get to play with because it does spawn ideas.
It's good for little ideas and taking notes down and recording stuff on the fly, but also it does turn your kit into like a little electric drum kit.
Yeah.
So
I will say too that more on point, like Luke texted me 3 days ago, I think you said, and you said you had something in the realm of 80 ideas.
Yeah.
80 riff,
which is just
God. To me that's absurd.
So here I want to point a question to Luke here because this is also going to be the same question I'm about to ask all of you, but because of that statement, I specifically want to start it with you. If you have 80 ideas like that, like how do you go through filtering those out? Like what does the process look like for what's good and what doesn't make the cut?
It's almost kind of like rolling in a RPG game. It's like you have all of these items that could be good for your build, and they might be amazing items, but they might not necessarily work with your skill set and attributes. So it's basically like, all right, bring it up. This work for what I'm working on? No. Another. And you're going to hear the same riffs so many times, but it's all about the time and place. It's like, cliche analogy, but it's like proper ingredients. Like when you're at a point in a song and you need a certain feeling, you go to your spice rack and you're like, all right, what tastes good? So it's cycling basically.
Okay. And then so to take that and extrapolate it out to like now you're in an environment where you've got 3 other band members, right? And you all have a bunch of different ideas of your own. How do you guys like filter and sift through, to use the cooking metaphor, like how do you sift through spices collaboratively? Like what does the process look like? Like how do you as a group sift through some of that?
Well, you guys?
If I can go ahead and jump right off that one, I would go ahead and say that I trust the opinions. Well, and it really does come down. It comes down to trusting the 3 opinions of the people around you, and also that, especially as a bass player, it's kind of I sort of default to the what serves the song mentality, and I think that that's really good for that collaborative, like pick a spice or whatever. If the to follow the analogy, if the recipe calls for this particular bass line, that's going to be the bass line that I'm going to play. If it calls for this drums or, these guitars, if this guitar is literally just going to, drone on an octave chord or whatever for, an entire verse, then that's what we're going to do because we, or at least that's what I
think a lot of it is just like, at least for me personally, is if we're not having fun, the audience, no one else is. So at the end of the day, like we have to just be flat out having fun with whatever we're playing and whatever the other person is playing as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a pretty good analogy, just like a good thing to point out because like at the stage we're at, if the songs aren't entertaining live, like they're not like that's going to be how we kind of get a new fan is playing these songs with our absolute hearts. Like I think that's like the draw.
Yeah, and waiting like 3 more albums before we get annoying and experimental.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So also like a perfect example of that is once Luke joined and we started to play some of the songs that we recorded with the first album, and okay, now how are we going to kind of play these live? I mean, Talent Borrows is the like number one example of that. And I have literally had people come up to me after the show and sit there and go, man, you got, like, oh, that was a good set, but man, that last song. And what was your guitar? Like, what was the guitarist on the right? What was he doing? So I'm going to hand the mic back over to Luke so he can kind of explain that. But it illustrates the point that we're trying to make.
Well, basically, how this kind of all got started is about, 3 months ago, back in late December or something?
Maybe even October. November,
yeah. You had a guitar player that bailed on you guys, and you needed, like, you were asking me if I wanted to help out, and of course I would love to help out. I've known Ben literally since freshman year of high school. Yeah. We've been doing music for over a decade, so it was nice to hop in, and he gave me the set, gave me the songs, and basically for 3 months, I played through that set pretty much daily. So after a while, I mean, in the nicest possible way, you get bored. So you just you put in new ideas, and some of them work and some of them suck. But when you get down to the ideas that work and you play them and the other people in the band like them, you start to do that. And Talent Borrows was one that I really enjoyed kind of digging in on, because the last part of that song has sort of like a noise interlude that you said Gary made all that?
Yeah, that was the moment where apparently the weed called to Gary.
Callbacks.
Yeah. So, that was like, what kills me though is Gary made that, but I could have done it. That's what I used to do when I when I first started this, was like, all right, let's just twist like delay pedals all the time. And you
did that at a freshman year talent show. I remember you were literally like up on the stage with a drummer and a DL4 making these delay storms, and everyone was just like, what the fuck is that?
But I think that, to Gary's credit, isn't that kind of like, did he do that at the end of the recording process with you guys? Yeah. So I mean, I think I don't know. I feel like that's almost to Gary's credit of like he probably wouldn't argue with you that you could have done that, but I think that was a little bit of him understanding what it needed for you guys and understanding your work, really.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, I could, like, it's in the sense of like you see like a baseball player like making an amazing catch. Like, well, I could have done that. It's like, well, you're not. So, like, yeah. No, like, and there are so many like little moments like that where it's like, dude, this wouldn't have happened if Gary wasn't the producer. Like, yeah, it's 100%. He kind of came in clutch there.
That's awesome. So I want to go back really quick. I've got a couple of things as we'll get into the live music discussion, kind of the tour that you guys just went on. But where did that question go? It's somewhere in my head. I forget who said it, but something about, I think, Jake, you said it about if the audience isn't having, or if we're not having fun, then the audience isn't having fun, right? How do you or actually, hold on. There was that, and then there was a discussion around like those moments where like audience members will come up to you after the show and say like, oh, like this or that. Like, how do you identify those pieces when you're in the studio and working on stuff where you or have you been able to identify that? Like, is there anything that you've been in the studio and been like, oh, this is going to be a hit live, or does it all have to get figured out live?
I was gonna say, I feel like it's a complete crapshoot.
Yeah. It kind of, as cheesy, and I hate saying this. I really hate saying this phrase, but it's kind of just a vibe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you just kind of, you feel it, and then you're like, all right, well, it's kind of like if you find a riff that you want to play over and over, like, obviously you don't want to let it overstay its welcome, but at the same time, like, because you want to play it over and over, like, all right, well, I'm going to give that to the audience and maybe call it back later in the song or something like that. But
I feel like conventional wisdom would say like Clem Fandango would be like the biggest hit on the record. I feel like it's like conventionally like a pop song. And
Right.
It, like it
High
has
energy,
the
all
least.
that.
I love it, but it has the least streams on the album. You know, like so it's kind of crazy. Like Talent Borrows is a very subversive song, but at the same time we kind of went all in on it with like I send it out to people and like, hey, like, what do you think about this for your playlists and stuff? And like it's kind of a strange song, and it's still like that's the least attainable song I'd say on the album, possibly.
Well, I mean, it goes back to the whole thing that they always say less is more, and like, isn't that song literally 3 notes on the bass?
Yeah, no, the bass does have 4 notes.
Oh.
The majority of it is a 3-note structure.
Yeah. But like it's and the drums are.
But it's what the song needed.
Well, like that, and that started out as I think even I put 16 notes with the same tempo, and Gary was like, "No, that's too many hi-hats," and I was like, "Oh, okay."
I remember that.
And he's like, "Oh, also too much bass drum." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then,
he
like,
wanted you barely playing the drums.
yeah, and
it works. It's so haunting.
Well, funny enough, it sounds silly because he's like, play less, and I was messing up because I kept instinctively hitting more bass notes, and I'm like, but that feels like there should be one there, and I don't know. I think obviously in the end he was right, and less is more often, and I don't know, maybe it's just what people are into right now, like more slower stuff with bass, or I don't know.
I've definitely given up trying to predict what people are into. Especially because like I think my mentality with like writing a lot of music is always like zig when people zag. Like I think while we were writing this album, which like a lot of these songs, I mean, some of these songs go as far back as like 2016 or 2017. I mean, some of these are old songs, and like at the time, like bands like Modern Baseball were really big, and like I don't know, it's like a lot of those bands kind of like bottled lightning, like with their sound. Like it's kind of like the Front Bottoms. I'm surprised they are a big band. Like that's mean, but like I get the appeal, but like that's like so like left field. Like trying to like obviously I don't think any of us, all 4 of us would agree, like none of us would ever try to like write a song that's like a sound that's popular right now.
I've never been hip enough to determine what that is to begin with.
Right. Like I'm constantly listening to new music, so like in the sense that like that shit inspires me when it's good. But yeah, like I would never try to like emulate a set. I don't think any of us want that.
I think if anything, like I would love to emulate, like obviously I say all the time my favorite band being Blink-182, like I would love to emulate a feeling that they like, that whole no fucks given, like I'm just gonna kind of do whatever I feel like, but as long as I'm not hurting anybody, and like I'm just gonna have fun, like and again, because it in the end, like you can't really predict. You can sometimes. I mean, I guess that dude from Nickelback literally spent like a year writing "This Is How You Remind Me" or some shit, and like predicted that was going to be a hit. So I guess you can predict hits if you study it.
I've heard Rivers Cuomo puts all of his lyrics on a spreadsheet, so God only knows.
We'll stick with the opening.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Can we elaborate on that? What the fuck? Is that a real thing?
Yeah, no, I'm actually not joking. So apparently,
is that how he excels?
So yeah, I've heard he like
I mean, is he running analysis on his like character count and his lyrics, and like I mean that's a crazy process there.
I think what he does, and then like I'm not Rivers Cuomo, thank God, but he like is like, okay, I'm gonna like have a like literary effect here, and I need a verb.
Wow.
Yeah, and it needs to be this many syllables, and he has a spreadsheet where he like literally turns to. Like there is definitely some science to writing music, and actually that's something I've kind of been enlightened to since we went to the studio. Like Gary explained it to me in a very non-scientific way of like, or maybe it's just stating facts of like, this is your first album, do you want this to be accessible or what? And that was a good point, because not like we were writing some like dismemberment plan shit, but like there was definitely moments where it's like, this last part of this verse, you got to play it safe. And
do you feel like that molded or changed tracks on the album in a way that looking back on it, you disagree with the outcome, I guess? Do you feel like that has neutered any parts of your sound, or do you think that was a productive part of the process to have the audience in mind like that?
I think for the most part, yes. There's some parts on the record I disagree with slightly, but it was like, if I disagreed with it that much, I would have said something. And there was plenty of moments, as you guys remember, where I was like, Gary, no, fuck you, dude, we're doing this. And he was like, all right, you know what? And then like every once in a while, he'd be like, I'm glad you said something, because I do think it sounds better that way.
Yeah.
We describe him as such a hard ass, and it's more like he absolutely is my type of like humor. That's the best way I can describe it. Like he's blunt when he needs to be, but like funny blunt. Yeah. So, but yeah, there was plenty of moments where I was like, I want to, because here's my thing is like it was a compromise between, how about we write like a 2-minute, 20-second like pop punk sounding song when I wanted to write a 7.5 minute, like, oh, we're gonna have like horns here, and then there's gonna be like 45 seconds of silence. Like it was a compromise between completely like left field, inaccessible, and probably would have absolutely sucked, and hey, let's like do the safe thing and make like completely make this song not suck. So like there was definitely, it's hard to like, because it sounds like you're compromising your values when you say like, oh, let's play it safe. And I think there's a very good way of doing that and a very formulaic way of doing that. And I think we manage to stay away from formulaic, because like my whole life, like the only thing I've ever been scared of being is a cliche. And I definitely can say with this album, we're not a cliche. Like there's some pop punk songs on there, but it runs a gamut of like sounds the whole way through the 27 minutes it lasts.
And to kind of tag back just a little bit, like Patron Saint is an absolutely perfect example of this exact thing, because Ben kind of was like, there were some of the songs, and this was admittedly earlier during the recording process, where it's like Gary's, no, we should do it this way, and we're like, yeah, okay, good point, But then once we got to something like Patron Saint, Ben was more like, let me, like you said earlier, let me give it a shot. Let me give it a shot for, let me satisfy the Gary requirements of this, but, a little bit more in the vein of what I was originally thinking with the song. So, there's some slightly different song structures, and, there's even where in that song you feel like you're about to go into a chorus again, and then boom, it's a bridge, So there is still, to avoid the formulaic aspect of a song, it's like, oh, I've heard this song structure before of yep, there's that first chord, and all that kind of thing. And something like Patron Saint does not do that. You're like, oh, okay, I wasn't really expecting it to go there, but and you're, we go into the bridge of that song, and it's like, ooh, yeah. Feels good, and it's powerful. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask one more question about process, and I want to kind of dig into some of the stuff on tour. So I'm going to follow this up with another question right after you guys give an answer. But with some of the stuff that you were talking about on how you like cut down a lot of the material, some of the songs started like 6 minutes long, and you went in there and immediately trimmed a lot of the fat on it and tightened a lot of things up. But you, in that process, learned a little bit about refining your sound and your songs. What would it look like for you guys if today you were now like, okay, with all these new things that we know, we're going to write a 12-minute long song? Like, what would that process look like for you guys?
If it had to be 12 minutes?
Or just like, or super long. I mean, like, it doesn't have to be.
Right. No.
Like,
I get what you're saying.
Kind of like left to our own devices, we were able to, like, nobody's gonna.
I think we found the difference of like what is filler and what's not.
Yeah. That was a conversation we actually had in studio, or maybe it was right after studio, I'm not sure. But I remember, I think, Rob, you said like, yeah, that we definitely gotta cut the song down time wise, because you said something about runtime, and I remember going, Gary isn't concerned about runtime. it's if the song is you kind of have diminishing returns on the ability of a song to be interesting when it goes on for a long time. That doesn't mean a 20-minute song can't be interesting for 20 minutes.
You just have to be on your shit.
Yeah,
for 20 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
like that Rush song, 2112.
Doing it. There's like something like the No Effects Decline song where it's like 20 songs with really effective transitions, but you can tell that they like kind of wrote them separately. And then there's something like the old school prog epics where it's like you can tell this was meant to be one consistent thematic thing. That shit's hard. That shit's really hard.
I think there's the reverse of, and I hope this isn't me just shitting on Green Day, but is Jesus of Suburbia the same 3-minute song like repeated 4 times?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well-
I think we kind of, and this kind of coincides with this. There's like a documentary on Netflix called This Is Pop, I believe it's called. And they have a whole episode on Sweden because a lot of pop writers actually come from Sweden. And they have like this, like Swedish people are amazing in the sense that they're just like, I don't really have time for bullshit. So can you just get to the point, and they kind of like the producers that come out of Sweden kind of have that similar mentality when we're like working on music. So, their whole mentality is like, why would any part of the song be not interesting? And that's a really good point. Like, why would you not like want every single second of a song to be interesting? So that's kind of when we walked away from studio, it was Gary doesn't want shorter songs. He wants more interesting songs. So does the audience.
Every instant of a song being exactly the instant that you need in that song for it to people want to listen to your whole 3.5 minute long song and be like, that was a good 3.5 minute long song,
And like I've had experiences before writing long tracks where people will get kind of caught into traps where they feel that because they've gone in a certain direction, they're like creatively beholden to finish that direct, when it's like, no, you're just inside your own head at this point. It's like, if it's boring, it's boring. Like no matter what arbitrary creative rules you've invented for yourself, you have to kind of take a step back from that and do that reality check of, oh, is this boring? Like,
I mean, you gotta take in people's like attention span, and like oftentimes as like there's a time and a place for pure self-expression, and like I don't care what anyone thinks. I just want to put this onto media and whatever, and like make a CD. But like then there's like I want someone to listen to this for more than 10 seconds. And especially because unfortunately a lot of times you show people an album and they check it out for 10 seconds on their phone speaker. So if you're not able to like catch them quick, and that's where I was kind of joking before, but at the same time not, where we got to wait a few albums, but then we can get weird and annoying and experimental, because hopefully by then we have people who will stick around and want to hear that weird shit,
Yeah, you kind of can't do, I mean, this is more marketing, but like you kind of can't do the conventional like, oh, this worked for Radiohead. Like, yeah, Radiohead had 10 million fans after their first album, but
Well, so to and I mean, look, I've listened to Radiohead. The nuances of their discography, I don't know how much sense this question makes. But if not, we'll cut it. Fuck it, right? Shit, where was that question going? Oh, like when you said they had 10 million fans after their first album, like, do you think that Radiohead was, playing it safe, or do you think they were doing more weird experimental shit that they wanted to? Like, I guess is the question.
Luke and I have had this conversation a lot.
Have that conversation. Girl.
Yeah. So like, I'd say 3.5, maybe 4 of us in this band are like pretty big Radiohead fans, or at least we very much so enjoy them. And like, I've never felt like Radiohead ever, at least after their like maybe first album, maybe their second album, ever said like, oh, well, we got to consider the pop sensibility of this. Like, but like all 5 of them went to like music school, it's like they've made a study of this. Maybe they don't care much about that study because I think they all dropped out, but like, I don't think they labor over the point of, is this going to be catchy, or is this going to be, they just kind of shit out good music. And like, and that's that's cool. Like I also think they wear their inspiration on their sleeve a lot, and people don't notice that because it's just like, oh, the shit is so good. And that's something like definitely on this album, like even going into it, I was kind of like, it's okay if this song sounds like, you know, a 2001 song or whatever. Like, it's okay. Like, it's fine. You know, like...
I always kind of thought that they are very, very good at because what I always thought is for you to effectively communicate a more abstract artistic idea, there has to be some sugar with the medicine. Like,
yes.
You have to give them a reason to latch on for them to be receptive to the more artistic stuff you want to do. And I think that Radiohead is very good at that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's probably a more apt way of saying what I was trying to say, of like, they don't sit there and go like, hey, how can this like chorus be more catchy? It's just, they just happen to do a catchy chorus every time. And I think it's because they just like writing fun music. You know, I don't think it's anything like, and I think that's like kind of what we would love to strive for is, and I honestly, like with some of the new demos, I do kind of feel like there is some sugar with the medicine. Exactly. Like it is kind of like, yeah, this is a gloomy little like riff, but like it's still going to get stuck in your head, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like they just hit a perfect balance.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you could just sit there and do like a 17-minute like drone sound.
Yeah, you could always be Mertzbau and like just, you know, make it your mission to be as unpalatable as possible for artistic purity. And that's admirable, but you just have to understand that that's going to be you in your bedroom rolling the dice for those 10 people who vibe with the thing you're making.
Yeah.
Like,
whoever is listening to what is that? It's The Caretaker, that 6-hour long
I
album
love
about
that
Alzheimer's.
album.
I'm sorry, but like, do you sit there on your morning commute and like, all right, I'll listen to the next half of the first album on my way home?
No, I might drive off the interstate if I listen to that on my drive to work. It's just so depressing. But yeah.
No one just puts that on. You put that on one time,
And then you're good.
Okay, and then so I guess to kind of get us on the tour, and yeah, I mean, so we've been going almost an hour at this point. So we can, like I said, we can go as long as you guys want. But if you guys are like, hey, shit, we've got to go, we got to write some stuff.
20 minutes. Yeah.
Cool. But with touring with all this stuff, I assume, I mean, everything you guys played on tour was like you weren't playing any unreleased songs, right?
No.
Okay. So then on that note, what you know, take a moment to think of one of the songs in your head, and like what were some of the differences in how you played it on the album and at the beginning of the tour versus how it sounded at the end, and like what were some of those things that like kind of influenced some of that, and what were like some of those steps along the way?
Well, if you want to answer, you got anything to say?
I mean, you go ahead first.
So like it's kind of funny because like most of my life I've considered myself a guitarist who happens, like I wouldn't even say happens to sing. It was like when Scarlet Street absolutely first started, like as in like I made like a Instagram page. It was like, okay, I can play bass, I can, you know, do MIDI and drums and, you know, play guitar, and I guess somebody has to sing on these and I'm the only person. So like I've never ever really considered myself a singer. So I will definitely say like by the time like even in the album release show, I almost consider that part of the tour. Let's just call that part of the tour. And like I feel like between that day and like Sunday in Indianapolis, I like finally learned how to sing. Like, and for the first time I like legitimately enjoyed it. It wasn't like a belabored thing I had to do every night. Like even in studio, like it felt like, fuck, I have to sing. And it's
like 2 boxes of throat coat.
I went through, dear God, I don't even know how much I think I bought like a bulk pack from Costco of throat coat. I hated singing. I hated how my voice sounded so much. And honestly, like to Gary's credit, once again, like he had a really good setup with like these crazy microphones and everything. but he also had, like, what's crazy is he had no comment on my voice, and like part of me was like, that is so calming, but another part of me was like, I wish you'd say something. Like, am I emotive enough?
Some acknowledgement.
And
something.
he's not a vocal coach. I would have needed a vocal coach. But my point being is, like, between like night 1 and night whatever of a tour, it was like, okay, I'm kind of figuring out how to like scream here at the end of Talent Borrows, which is flashback 2 years ago, is which I wish I would have been able to do that. And it was like, oh hell yeah, I've figured out how to do, like, I used to play, when we used to play songs like back in 2018, like live, there was some times where we'd literally, like, 3 songs in, my voice would be done, and I'd be like, cool, I'm gonna limp through these, like, I'm not even hitting the right notes anymore because my voice is done. And yeah, like, this tour for me personally was like, holy shit, I can finally sing, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't say, like Luke said earlier, it wouldn't necessarily get boring, but I think something about this tour, I played the songs just enough where I started, I mean, obviously there's muscle memory that's been there, but getting more confident live, just adding in stuff that isn't in the songs, little hi-hat tricks and stuff that just for fun, that like during the bridge of Mazda or something like that. Yeah, like it's just, as a drummer, there's not that much more I'm doing. It's kind of like, once I figure out the structure of the song, I just gotta get through the song and have fun with it. And drum fills are always change a little bit here and there. Like, I never do the same exact one, but I could if I wanted. It's just that would get boring, so you just kind of have fun and think of new fills along the way, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know if any of you guys felt like it, but it was like, over the 6 days, by being in that close quarters and playing literally every night, it's just like we kind of got tighter every show.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, from the first show, we're playing like we do in practice, we're playing like we did at the album release show, but by day 6, you start to get telepathy. Like, you're just like, what I used to look at Jake to get, I just kind of get now. Like, so I think there was a lot of that, like, growth in even just the span of a week.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Also, just kind of having that, we had some shows that were, while we were on tour, we had some shows that were tighter than others. And then there was also just like, oh, hey, last night when we played Dealey Plaza, it sounded a little better than tonight, or vice versa. It doesn't,
Yeah, and it was such song to song though. That's what's funny. It's like night 2, Clem Fandango would sound great, and night 3 would sound awful, but like night 3, Dealey was perfect or something.
Mm-hmm.
So,
mm-hmm.
But there was definitely like, and it's funny because I've been like, Luke and I have been playing in various, like, if you could call them bands, I'm not really sure, but like, like there was some, like, Luke and I have always shared some sort of telepathy, and like, that was him joining this has been fucking incredible because for that reason alone. But Rob and I have, my God, been doing this my entire adult life now, and like, Jake is such a damn good drummer that, like, really, it's not even like we've developed that kind of, I love that term telepathy, but like, we've developed that kind of sense, but it's like, not even like you have to, it's kind of like a tractor beam. Like, he's gonna just do his thing and you just follow. Like, and he's so good at that. And that's, it's just, I guess this is the best group of 3 other musicians I've ever played with. And it's like, I don't know, by the end of the tour, it showed. Like, we were like sounding like what I want to see, and that's what's really important.
I was also super into the fact that, by our last show, which was in Indianapolis, I think all of us were pretty tired, and we were all very, very ready to be home and to see our families and do all that kind of stuff. But we still went out there, and it was just like, that was a damn good set right there, and there was like, hell yeah, I always kind of go to, especially Jake afterwards, because I mean, bass and drums, obviously. But I go to Jake afterwards, and it was like, good, right? And he's like, yeah, it was good. It's like, and it's, it's that little affirmation and reaffirmation, I guess, of just, yeah, that felt good. Okay, cool. I'm not the only one, kind of thing. Yeah.
Not to detract from anything, but just I don't know if, for the record, I think the Next Door guys are playing All of My Love by Led Zeppelin. I don't know if they're playing it or if, but anyway, yeah.
So then as you guys are going, you're playing these sets and things are getting tighter and you've got that telepathy that you mentioned. Are there any things that you guys found yourselves doing? I think Jake, you mentioned like trying different things that aren't in the song. Is there anything that, you found yourself doing night after night that was a repeat, or was it just every night you're trying different shit?
Well, one thing that's just flat out not in the album, the ending song that we end shows with, I guess, and also in the album with Talent Borrows, there's a whole like fade out part where I kind of do that same beat but on like a low tom thing instead of the hi-hat, and then I add a bunch of fills, and it slowly builds up and gradually gets more explosive. But that is not on the album at all. And other than that,
Clem Fandango. You completely changed how you drum on that one.
You're right.
It's amazing.
I forgot there's a whole like bridge in there that's not in the album at all. That whole bridge has drums, but in the album it's just some crashes. I think it's very simple. And
now the live version.
Not to make comparisons, but I think that one, and I don't know, it sounds very self-indulgent to say because I'm a Travis fan, but I feel like that specific song sounds Blink-esque at times.
Oh yeah, 100%. There, like I said, with this album, we kind of like wore our influences on our sleeves a bit, and I think that's totally. That's what you do when you're, with your first like real release.
Even other dude, it was funny because what was his name? Was it Connor or Caleb who came and filmed with Gary, and then the footage got corrupted, so he couldn't.
Yeah, it was Connor.
Yeah, I think he was a drummer too, and he literally like watched me play a song, and he's like, "You fan of Travis Barker?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I like Travis Barker. He's a cool guy."
All right. Well, I think at this point we've been going for well over an hour, I feel, or at least an hour,
just under.
And we've got some drum practice going on right next to us. So I will let you guys get to what you're doing for the rest of the day and starting to write some new material. But thank you for doing this. It's been a fucking blast.
Hell yeah! Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I guess really quick, if you guys have any sort of plug or things that you want to send people towards or anything like that, like I said, I don't know if this is coming out, so maybe this plug is useless, but whatever you want to plug.
Do we have anything to plug? I mean, we have a new album, but that's about it.
I've got an OnlyFans under the name of. It's called a bulk package throat coat.
Yeah, just go. $20 a month.
$20 a month
for him.
Bulk package throat coat. Basic package. What do you,
the bulk package?
Luke? What do you get on the basic package?
I don't want to spoil it.
You don't want to spoil it. It's all a surprise.
It's nuts.
All right, boys. I think that's it. Wow, good job. You made it to the end. Thank you for listening this far into this podcast. I'm sure that's good for my engagement metrics or whatever the algorithm overlords are interested in. Check out the description for any show notes, links to the information about the guest or myself and this podcast. And yeah, that's it. Am I done recording these intros and outros? I think I am. And yeah, that's it. I don't really know what else to say, so just gonna leave it here.